us today. So thrilled to have you.
Good to be here.
Maybe to start off, let's tell the people, who are you? How did you end up as such a brilliant host and moderator in Brussels? What's your story? Tell me everything.
Sure. So I'm Anna. I've been here in Brussels for about 8 years now. I've done a little bit of everything from communications to journalism, now going freelance, doing more and more training for the past few years, mainly focusing a bit more on energy, climate, environment. But yeah, I'm moderating a fair share of events for the past few years. I'm part of a collective called moderating.eu, which our main mission is to make policy events better, more fun as a business and policy conference can be, of course, more impactful. Yes. Also following a bit the KPIs that you were talking about before. And how does one get into event moderation? It's a very good question. I realized that when I was a kid, I was a very socially awkward girl, but somehow I really enjoyed being on stage. I really, I used to do dancing, I used to do a theater. And somehow when there was some school festival or little show and tell, I was always picked to present the event and be a little bit of the master of ceremonies for the students. Already when I was 5, there's a picture of me as a Minnie Mouse presenting an event. And I think at some point, a couple of years back, I just connected the dots and realized, actually, I was always picked to do that job. And I realized that here in Brussels, it was something that you could be paid for. And I was like, actually, I might as well give it a try.
I love it. Oh, that's so cool. So it was something that always kind of came naturally to you, or do you think it was something that you kind of just fell into? Or do you think it's something that took?
I think it came very naturally. Yeah, as I said, as a kid, I always somehow enjoyed public speaking, and when we had some presentation in class, I always felt I was really somehow enjoying it. And then I studied journalism. That was my bachelor's degree, and then of course you get to do a little bit of radio hosting, TV. Behind the camera, on camera, and I realized that I always enjoyed being on a microphone, being on camera. So I guess also one thing led to the other. At the end of the day, it's also, when I moderate an event, it's a bit like, I have smart people next to me, normally. I ask them questions.
Fingers crossed.
And I don't even have to write about it afterwards.
Yeah, that's so nice. Yeah, you present and then you're like, job done, I'm
exactly.
out.
Indeed.
Wonderful. So, we've been talking a bit today about kind of the pre and the post-production of events in Brussels, but I really want to get your POV on being a host, moderator, MC. For you, what are some of the most important elements when someone says, hey, I want you to moderate our event? What are the things that you immediately start thinking of? What are those key things that for you help you pull off a successful event?
Sure. So, I normally like getting involved already in the pre-production phase a little bit, especially when it comes to designing the content and to at least give my feedback on the content, on the flow of the discussion. I always try to get myself already in the, let's say, in the mood of the event, or transport myself into, what would the event look like, and see, okay, this could work, this will have to be very careful in terms of timing, this transition here, it's going to be difficult, we cannot really have a dead end here in between, so we need to do something in the meantime to spice it up. Normally, there are a few things that I always ask. The first one, which we're just discussing, was the purpose of the event, to understand a little bit, what do you want to get out of it, how does this event fit into your broader communications goals, policy goals, strategic goals, etc. And not, we just have an annual event, so we kind of have to do it as a, box ticking exercise. So I always ask my clients to be clear on that, or to at least think about that. Then there's a question that I normally ask as well, in terms of what does success look like for you in terms of the event. And then I also like to ask them, when the audience will be leaving the room after the event, what is a feeling, what is a message, what is something that you would want them to bring back home? What is a message that you want them to stick with? Because that sets the mood for, not only my delivery in terms of public speaking, but also in terms of how do we create the experience that is as close as possible to the end goal that you want the audience to live with at the end of the day.
Right. So it's a little bit of reverse engineering almost, of figuring out kind of what we can do to evoke those feelings at the end.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think, for a lot of organizations, picking the moderator is a little bit, sort of the last item on, the last box to take and the last item to check. And like sometimes it feels like, you are thrown last minute into the organization of the event, and then you start realizing that there's a lot of things that, maybe you haven't considered that. Maybe you haven't considered that your program is really packed. Maybe we could consider this format instead of this format. And they tell you, yeah, it's a great idea, but it's too late to change that. And this is a bit when things are complicated, and this is why I always encourage to really involve your moderator from the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually going to bring up a little while ago, you wrote a LinkedIn post about this, which I loved, because you said, I love getting involved in these events, but then, I give them this idea and they say, yeah, we would have loved to do that, but we don't have time now, right?
Exactly.
We ran out of time. And so the idea of not involving your moderator soon enough, you kind of lose some opportunities, I think, to do some cool things or change up the program a little bit. So for you, we don't have to put a number to it, but how early in the process do you think is kind of the sweet spot for you to get involved with the programming?
Yeah, I don't think there's like a specific timing as such. I think in maybe 2 months before, like at least before speakers are contacted and confirmed, like it's good for me to be involved. It's good for me to do a bit of a program check. To say, okay, maybe this session we could do it in this other format. No, but also what we were discussing before, what are some formats that go beyond the introductory remarks, question round that is not really a question round at the end of the day because there's no discussion, and then little Q&A of 5 minutes and gone. So in order to innovate a little bit on these formats, I think definitely before speakers are chosen and before speakers are contacted, because then you can already say like, you can already brief the potential speaker beforehand and say like, hey, this is what we had in mind. This is what we will expect from you.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel that in Brussels you get that opportunity often? For like, do people bring you in early enough, or do you think in general it's always like a last minute thing and you wish that maybe
it's been increasingly a last minute thing. And for instance, to give you an example, in the past 3 weeks, there's always been one client that contacted me last minute for an event happening the week after.
Oh gosh.
It's been like maybe 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and it just happened that, I was available, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But then this means that in terms of shaping the program, in terms of giving my feedback, we are a little bit more constrained. And of course, there's not the same degree of preparation and of thought through, of course. But I think at the end of the day, the experiences I've enjoyed the most are the ones where I could get involved from the beginning, where we could create something at the end of the day. I think that's a lot of fun.
Definitely, and I'm sure it helps you feel a bit more of the ownership as well as the person coming in, kind of running the show, so to speak.
Indeed.
It gives you that opportunity to also kind of stake your claim and how it should be run. So that makes sense. Going back a little bit, because we touched in our previous Q&A, but also just now. The formats for an event. In Brussels, it's a town of panels and research papers, and I have to say, one of my least favorite things about events is when you have, let's say, like a policy like wonk or like an academic, and they're like, I need to present 50 slides on this super technical thing, right? So how can we think a bit smarter about the different formats on the day itself? Like, what are some different programming things that you've seen work really well in events, and what are the things that can kind of keep the audience interested but also still present the content that needs to be presented?
Sure. I think in Brussels we often fall into this trap that we follow always the same structure of events. It always starts the same way. You have the introductory, the welcoming words of the president or secretary general of token organization, followed by one keynote speech, sometimes 2 keynote speeches. Then there's a presentation in between, because there always has to be a presentation. And then maybe towards the end, we're going to move to a panel discussion that because all the previous speakers went over time with their speaking time, it leads for less time for the actual discussion or for the audience, for the audience interaction. Normally, what I always suggest to do is, first of all, be really mindful about the amount of time that you have and like all the different transitions within the event that you have. I mean, I can be a strict timekeeper. I cannot make miracles, that's for sure. But sometimes, for instance, I really have something against keynote speeches. I really struggle with keynote speeches. Yeah. With Moderating EU, we always say that if the person that you intend to invite is not a good speaker, it's not going to say something new and something relevant, and it's not going to stick to time, then don't make it a keynote.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It's a bit the way we evaluate normally, and in those cases, then what I always suggest is to have more sort of a fireside chat format. Right. So I have the expert or token commission official or expert academic, whoever, next to me. And then, because I'm in charge of asking the questions and I'm in charge of leading that session, once the time is up, I can say, all right, that's all the time that we have for today, even though maybe I still have 3 or 4 questions that I wanted to ask them. And I can say, all right, that's all the time we have for today. Let's move on into the next session. So it gives the moderator a bit more control over that timing and also the flow of the discussion. That makes it a bit more dynamic, other than a speech where a lot of times you have the same EU official repeating the same things all over again and hearing what the audience knows already.
Yeah,
you know?
No, definitely. Sometimes I wish it's if you ever watch like award shows on TV, like the Oscars or something, when they start playing people out because their speeches are taking too long. I always wish we could do that in Brussels, where you're like, oh, we're 5 minutes over time, and you start like blaring classical music so that they stop. Maybe we need to start doing that in Brussels, just playing people off.
So.
I think
maybe
we're onto something. But Anna, just because you are moderating, hosting, emceeing all of these different events for all these different topics. Like Brussels is of course an ideas town as much as it is an events town. There are so many different topics, policy points, files that people are working on, different industries being represented. How do you prepare as the person who's presenting all of this, who's asking the smart questions, who's keeping the energy levels up? Let's say I don't know, an event in tech one day wants to present on AI, but on another day you have something on regenerative agriculture or whatever it is. How do you keep it all straight? How do you learn about these different topics? How do you come in as kind of that knowledgeable person who's presenting all of these different ideas?
I think that depending on the moderator you would ask this question, some would be the kind of, like I really need to be over-prepared, like I really read like all these policy files and I really immerse myself into the topic and I really make sure that at least I can come across as an actual expert on this subject matter. Some other moderators will tell you, listen, my role is to be the dumbest person in the room and to ask the questions that nobody wants to ask. So I just like get myself a little bit with the basics and I have the questions prepared and then I just get going. Yeah. I think I'm a little bit in between. Okay. Now, I mean, I like to know what the important questions are and what the important, I don't know, policy milestones are if we talk about a specific topic, or what are the key debates and key dilemmas, and we'll prepare for it. But I don't feel like my role is not to be the expert at the end of the day. So I like to keep a certain degree of, I don't know, of naivety, of curiosity, this like child's curiosity a little bit to be able to ask, all right, why haven't you done that until now? Because I'm sure there's going to be someone in the audience who will be wondering this same question. So I think preparatory calls with event organizers are always, and the organization as such are important to understand, again, the objectives, what are the issues at stake, what are the key dilemmas or debates around that specific topic, but I try not to go that much in depth into that. Okay. There's gonna be some organizations and there's gonna be some markets and some industries that will really want you to go in depth and to understand really well the topic at stake and the organization, which is, I understand, but yeah, since at the end of the day, like, it's not my job to really be the expert and to really, I mean, my job is actually to make the topic as accessible as possible.
Right.
I try to keep a little bit this distance perhaps into the topic and not go that much in depth, also because I don't have time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm sure
for all those sessions in practice. So.
Exactly. I'm sure you're covering so many different topics, so it's really about, understanding what you need to understand to get through it. But I was just curious because I've found sometimes in events it seems the moderator, if they have a specialty, so to speak, and they really know their stuff, they ask these really intense, insightful questions, which is impressive, but then sometimes maybe it makes it a little bit less accessible, as you said, to the more general audience, maybe that's part of the event.
I mean, it has happened a couple of times that I've been to events and moderated events on topics that were maybe either health or consumer rights or stuff that I didn't have much of an idea about, and then people would come to me and say like, "Oh, it seems like you really know about the topic." I've been briefed very well,
exactly,
and I normally I make sure to be well briefed and to at least know exactly what are the questions that I should be asking and getting feedback from the organizers. Also, I think in terms of speaker preparation, sometimes when I have calls with speakers, I normally try to get all the speakers in the virtual room, rather than having individual one-on-one calls. First of all, because again, I don't have time. Secondly, I also like sometimes when we have preparatory calls with speakers to let them speak among themselves, take a bit of a step back and see how they interact with each other, see what are perhaps the differences that you can sense by the way they talk about, I mean, I'm planning to have this, and these speaking points. And then there's the other speaker that says, well, actually, I think that speaking point that you were saying, this is something that we struggle a little bit with. And they start to have a little chit-chat among themselves. And I take a step back. And then suddenly I just come in and say, okay, this little discussion that you're having among yourself right now, between the five of us, bring it back on stage. Yeah,
exactly. Save it for the panel. No, but that's fantastic, because I think it also helps a bit with the rapport building beforehand. Because if you're just going in cold and you've never met these people, it's maybe a bit tricky to kind of feed off of each other's energy, and then you kind of fall into the trap of let's just go down the line and have everyone answer the question individually, and there's not really a conversation happening. So no, I think that's fantastic. But getting into the audience of the equation, how do you, when you're hosting an event, how do you keep the energy levels up? How do you keep people engaged? What do you think, from your experience, has been kind of those tried and true ways of keeping people awake, keeping people off their phones? So how do you keep people locked into whatever's happening on stage?
First of all, lots of coffee.
Yeah, always keep them caffeinated.
Since I'm the person who is in charge of keeping the energy levels up. Yeah. I think trying to set the tone already from the very beginning. From the moment I jump on stage, try to bring everyone in the room active and energized and attentive. I think it's something that comes fairly naturally to me. I'm a very bubbly person. I'm very Mediterranean, so I guess that always helps. But then I always first of all, so a couple of things here. First of all, I think this is once again where the event design and a bit the formats of the session really matters. If you have one keynote speech after the other and one presentation after the other at 9 a.m., attention levels are going to be going down, let's say by the third by the third speaker, and you will have executed the death by PowerPoint, and this is not something that we want. Right. This is why I always try to encourage audience interaction throughout, through polls, through indeed getting some feedback from the audience already, have a bit of a round of expectations. Sometimes we bring this throwable microphone, the catchbox, and we try to gather some opinion from the audience of that, and plus you get a little bit of exercise because you do a little bit of volleyball, between basketball and volleyball games.
Not pelting them with it.
Exactly. So yeah, I think having the audience interaction is really important there, and getting them to feel part of the event. I think it's the most important part. Answering also the question that we had before on audience formats and event formats. Sometimes what I like doing is like during a panel discussion or already at the beginning of a panel discussion, to try to gather the thoughts of the audience via a couple of polls or some Slido a Mentimeter little thing where I ask the audience a couple of questions about the topic of the panel, and then I get the panel to reflect on the answers of the audience. Yeah. So for instance, some question on, what do you think about, do you think that apples are better than pears? For instance, and I try to ask the audience, like, okay, so before I ask the panel, what does the audience think?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe some parts of the audience will think, yeah, I don't know, apples are really better than pears, or there's going to be an overwhelming majority for pears. Also, people who say, no, actually, have you forgotten about bananas? And then you got the results from the audience, and then you ask the panel, okay, so the audience thinks that. What do you think, or what do you think their responses say about the topic and the state of play? So this is already when you bring the audience to the panel and you make them a central part of the event. This is a format that I've lately started to test, and it works really well.
Yeah, I love that, because I feel like then you're really creating a dialogue between the audience and the panel, and it's not just the panel talking at people. And I mean, yeah, from an energy point of view, I'm sure it keeps them more engaged, but also it's just interesting from a psychological point of view. I think of like getting the kind of the group think into the panel and having that be part of the programming.
Indeed. It brings a higher degree of spontaneity with Brussels events clearly lack.
Yes, indeed. Cool. I love it. Well, we'll start wrapping up, but I just wanted to ask you maybe a few more kind of, not rapid fire, but just sort of short questions. What would you say is your favorite thing about moderating an event, and what would you say is your least favorite thing about moderating events?
Favorite thing, getting to know and speak to some really brilliant minds in the city, because there are a lot of them. What I like the least, I think a bit the pre-event phase, especially when you are with clients that are a bit on the micromanaging side, and they really want to be onto you, and they don't trust what you can bring to the table, and just like
that can be frustrating, I'm sure.
I think so.
But then talking about events themselves, you don't have to name names. We're not going to name and shame, but have you ever had, let's say, a favorite event? What were some aspects of that event that went really well and that you really loved? And then on the other side of that, what is the worst event you've ever moderated? Like, what were the aspects of that event? We don't have to say whose event it was, because we don't need to do that. But I'm just really curious, like for you, what you think worked super well. You came away and you're like, wow, that was the best event I've ever moderated. And then you came away and you're like, wow, that was a train wreck. So what were the elements of those kind of things?
I think one of the first events that come to my mind in terms of great events that I've really enjoyed, and I mean, I think it's worth also, mentioning them, is I've worked a few times with the Commission's DG for Education and Culture, and specifically for their unit in charge of Erasmus+. And it's always really great, because these are, institutional events are always tricky, because they sometimes don't want you to do, to be very spontaneous, let's just leave it like that. But instead, they give me and my colleague over here always full trust over the way that we wanted to design the formats of the event. At some point we got, for instance, like our speakers to, rather than give introductory remarks and have a panel, to just pitch to the audience and then getting the audience to react. We tested a lot of very fun formats with them, and it always works really well, and it's been a great cooperation and an example that co-creation can really make magic there. Worst event. I think it's been only once that I've really felt anxiety while an event was taking place, and it was a session. It was also an institutional client. We had an hour of discussion, an hour of event in total. they had the brilliant idea of having 3 mini panels within that hour with some high-level speakers, including ministers, including former commissioners, people who had a lot to say. And people who were given maybe in their briefings at the most 4 minutes for their first question, but already the first 2 speakers went over time by maybe 10 minutes. And that was a nightmare to moderate. I remember the face that I gave the organizers, like, I told you so.
Yeah,
I told you this was going to happen.
Goodness.
But yeah, that was really,
Yeah. No, that's exactly the moment when you need to start playing people off, I think.
I think, indeed.
Final thoughts, Anna. Anything that you wish people in Brussels knew about event moderation? Anything, any wise words you can impart upon us?
Sure. I mean, I think my final comment, and the one thing that I would want clients and institutions and corporate partners, trade associations to get away with, is the fact that as a city, we are very risk averse in terms of organizing events. We want everything super scripted. We want everything really like tied to the T, so to say. And it leaves no room for the actual meaningful conversations. It leaves no room for controversy. It doesn't make room for a spontaneity that can make events so much better. So I really wish that little by little we decide to take risks, which are not even risks at the end of the day. What's the worst that can happen? But that we start thinking more creatively, I think.
Okay, I love it. You heard it, right, everyone? Write that down. We need to think more creatively, collectively. Let's give a huge round of applause to Anna. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great.
And thank you all for joining us today. You can give an applause to yourselves. I think, cheers. Thank you.